And we're live. I believe we're live. Hey, look, yeah, there's audio and stuff.
See if we can't do it better than last podcast. We have
Look,
3
man.
restarts.
Look, man.
What's up, Hava?
Four's the charm. Cheers, my brother.
Cheers, bud. What you having tonight?
I made myself an old fashioned, but I decided to use some balcones. Normally, I would use Woodford Reserve because I have a little background. A really good friend of mine who is in Louisville. His brother-in-law owns a company called Bourbon Barrel Foods, and their slogan is "Eat your bourbon." And what it is they smoke all kinds of things with bourbon barrel staves from Woodford Reserve.
When are we going?
Dude, I'm down. Let's do this. Let's take the show on
That
the road.
sounds amazing. This
take the
sounds
show on the
amazing
road.
already.
And excuse me. Excuse me. And what I have is some Woodford Reserve smoked cherries, Woodford Reserve smoked bitters, and then normally I put Woodford Reserve in
Man,
glass.
I would be all over this. This sounds really good. I'd be all
It's
over that.
amazing.
Not gonna lie.
But yeah, if you want to check it out, bourbonbarrelfoods.com. They're amazing. They got all kinds of goodies.
I have to check that out.
Yeah.
And you write that down right this moment. Bourbon Barrel
telling
Foods. Plug.
Just be careful.
Unpaid.
You go down that rabbit hole, you're going to be, the wife's going to be like, what is this for? What is that for? You're going to be like,
Oh no,
shush.
you know
enjoy.
Mel. You know Mel. She's gonna be all
Yeah.
over it. So I will definitely check that out. Writing that down now. Cool. Well, welcome to episode. What is this? Episode 3?
Technically 3. I think I'm calling it 2. I think I called it 2.
That's right. It's
Right.
2 because this is
Yeah.
pilot was the first one. Yeah.
Yes.
Bourbon
So-
Barrel Foods.
It's delicious. Especially delicious.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. All right, I'm in. So yeah, welcome to episode 2, Hava. Rusty Nail.
We're doing it. We're doing the
Yep.
thing.
Rusty Nail's a Scotch drink.
I am curious about
Drambuie.
that. I've never had one before.
We should do that.
Very
Too. Let's do that too then.
All right,
There's
let's go.
Drambuie, which is a Scotch liqueur, was spiced usually with honey. It's a sweet drink.
Do they use honey or they use like mead kind of thing?
My understanding with Drambuie is it's a liqueur with honey.
Okay.
But I am not. I am nowhere near
An
the
expert.
authority on such things.
Okay.
A sommelier, I am not.
Ooh. Oh, that's a big word. That's a $5 word right there.
That's right, sommelier.
I'm not even gonna try to pronounce it. What are we talking about today, man?
So we got a lot of stuff today. You know, we've got some things. Some things we've wanted to cover for a while. We've got a couple of documentaries we want to talk about, kind of in the, what you watching Hapa, what you watching Seven kind of thread. We got a couple of things to talk about there. We got some really interesting. This is something we've been nibbling on since the pilot, which is social media.
Yeah.
I think both of us have a lot of thoughts on social media, its impact on the world and on the world in general. But for whatever reason, it remains in the news, right? So we can't really dodge
Yeah.
it. So it's a thing that that we continue to talk about, and I'm really excited to kind of dig into that. In particular, we're going to talk about some things with Facebook and TikTok. We're gonna hit maybe if we get on some lighter notes, some interesting movie cancellations, and some court
Yeah.
trials that are ongoing. So how we want to kick this off? We want to talk about who Hapa is and who Seven is. Hapa, tell me who you are.
I'm happy.
You are
Oh.
indeed Hapa.
I am this guy who I swear it's going to be like an ongoing joke that I'm in like a midlife crisis for the next like 2 decades because I'm like I'm
A
in this,
permanent
this
midlife crisis.
yeah I'm in this realm where I'm like I should get a normal job, and then I'm like nah, I'm good, I should retire. And it's funny that I had a discussion about this with my dad over the past weekend. I called him and we were talking because I won't talk about the title, but there's a specific game title out there that somebody that I used to work for the last game title has been dropping my name and saying that I need to be a community manager for, and she's been taunting me to the point where their people have started following me on social media and stuff, but I haven't done a resume, and it seems like a really fun idea, but I'm at a place in my life now where I'm enjoying my retiredness, and but yeah, we'll see. But if you haven't figured out from that long story longer, I'm a retired sailor, retired Navy guy, and now full time trying to be a content creator allegedly, and yeah, that's pretty much me. Laid back guy, easy going. Try to leave a better footprint on the world than when I leave this place. It's about as simple as I can get, I suppose. What about you?
Yeah. I do have I do have a regular job. Would recommend against it. Um,
Do not
so
recommend.
for what it's worth, I'm aware of some of the situations you're talking about, and it does sound pretty cool. Yeah, the regular job thing is good, and it's pros and cons, right, and everything. So I'm a former and to some degree current technical executive. I've played baseball in the past. I was really poor at driving race cars, much better at building them and being a fan from the pits. So also do some content creation, streaming, whatnot, primarily around games. I'm a musician for years and years. In fact, have had people recently hitting me up about playing again, which would be nice. So the stages went away during the pandemic. Hopefully they're coming back, and hopefully I can find one before too long, and maybe find myself in your town making some music.
I'm down.
So yeah, that's kind of us. You're wearing a really nice hat there, guy. Is that a
This
Rocket
is the
City Trash
logo.
Pandas hat? Is that what that is?
This is the logo of my army, man. This is if you mess with me, this is what you get. This is what you get in your front yard on a Friday night when you're waiting for your trash to be dumped. You're gonna see this guy zooming by. Yeah, no, almost everybody, because I used to spam the, great epic story that was raccoons in my life on social media fairly daily.
We all enjoyed that. That was fun.
Oh God, it was at one point. I remember specifically on my personal Facebook, I had said all I said was "there are more." Period.
Yeah.
So I moved into this house over a year ago now, and I heard things going bump in the night. Called Critter Control. Critter Control came out. They looked. Turns out they saw raccoon paw prints up in my attic. They'd moved in sometime during the construction process, and I went through about 3 weeks of just constantly dealing with capturing and relocating these raccoons, and it ended up being a mother and 4 babies at the end of the day. And this young man right here thought he had jokes and sent me this hat.
I did have jokes. I'm not gonna lie.
The joke's on him, though. I'll proudly wear this hat because
that is
cat.
that is the Rocket City Trash Pandas. If anyone's wearing, it's a AA franchise up in Huntsville, Alabama, Madison, Alabama, right next to Huntsville. And their gear is fantastic.
I love it.
I love
I
their
saw
gear.
this. I just laughed, and I also was like shaking my head in shame.
So it happened today. We're going to be covering some interesting stuff, but we're going to start off with kind of the, what we've been watching kind of stuff. And you and I have been talking about this. There's one of these that I recommended to you, and I think you've gone and watched it, so I want to talk about it, and that's the Great Hack documentary. But first, I want to get to one that I mentioned to you, and you were like, yeah, I think I've seen that. And it's the McMillions documentary. And McMillions is stylized with the S being a dollar sign. And this thing, to give a little details, it premiered in the United States on HBO in February of 2020. So it's been around for a minute, but then available in the UK in 2020 on Sky Documentaries. And it was nominated for 5 Primetime Emmys, which was Outstanding Documentary and Nonfiction Series among them. And it's a series, or it's a docu-series, but it's about the McDonald's Monopoly game. And this thing started back in 1989. And
I can't believe also that it had been around that long. I didn't know that they had been doing it that long.
Yeah, and I remember it, and I remember the hype, and I used to love going and getting the game pieces and collecting them and getting the little board. And it was one of the things I remember very fondly. But I remember always wondering who gets the winning piece, right? Because obviously when you played the game, you knew that there were some pieces, like if everyone you knew got Boardwalk and no one got Park Place, as an example.
Yep.
And so you had these pieces that were pretty hard to come by, and that became pretty obvious pretty quickly that when you were trying to play the game. Well, as it turns out, we started talking back then. I remember back then it's like, oh, I think it's a scam, right? And
Yep.
and it turns out it absolutely
100%.
was a scam.
Not officially,
it-
but officially. I mean, it's
Right. It turns out it was absolutely a scam. If you were a player of the game,
yeah.
right, Happen 7, playing the game, we absolutely being scammed. But
Totally.
the interesting thing about it is so was McDonald's.
Yes.
Right, that's the kind of twist, and this docu-series runs through that. So anyone who doesn't want to hear spoilers needs to just earmuff.
It's worth
for
it's worth
a couple minutes.
a binge or a light, every other weekend watch for sure. It's what kills me. I shouldn't say it kills me. Things like this, the scandal that happened with them, I'm willing to believe is why you don't see anything like that nowadays. Like you don't see
Yeah.
Doritos or Pepsi or anybody doing big giveaways like this anymore, and I'm assuming it's probably because of idiots like the scammers, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, idiot's a great word, right? But wow, right?
Yeah.
It was. What is interesting is, okay, it's a scam. So, I'll leave some details for the documentary for people to watch it. But the person who was perpetrating the scam comes out pretty quickly, right? You kind of know that.
Yeah.
You know that fairly early on. The interesting thing is investigators, and this is the FBI, right? These aren't. It's not like a couple of dudes with a cell phone. Like, this is the FBI that was digging into this because it ended up being, I think, $24 million or
Yep.
so in fraud. Right? It was significant. And so the FBI is investigating this thing. They could not figure out for the life of them how the scam was carried out. In
Yeah.
fact, they would have never figured it out had the person doing the scam not told them.
Yep.
And once you learned how the scam was being carried out, it almost made it really kind of made it obvious, for, like you said, the future states of people doing these or
Yeah.
companies doing this stuff. There really was no security measure you could take that could rule out the human element of just overcoming it. And the security measures that were in place for this thing, this is one of the things that impressed me in the docuseries. So McDonald's outsourced, which big companies often do, right?
Right.
Outsourced the creation of this campaign and all the printing of the elements. And so you had this ad firm involved that was McDonald's marketing firm. Those folks outsourced. They created the game. They created the game creative elements. And then
Right.
they had a company that did all the printing and stuff. And so there was this whole investigation the FBI goes through, and they want to look at all of these different players, all these different companies, and the security that they go through and they talk about, right? The security that was in this
It was pretty.
realm
It was in depth.
really, it was impressive, right? It was
Yeah.
really impressive, I thought. And looking at it, how does someone overcome it? And it really rules it down to there's only a couple of people who could,
Yep.
right? They were in the position to have overcome it. And even those people were going to have a hard time doing it.
Yes.
And so the docu-series follows through the investigation, which starts with winners, obviously, like who's
Yep.
winning, why are they
Yep.
winning, are
Yep.
they connected, and digs backwards. And so the series becomes just like this fascinating look into how investigation works. I thought that was a really cool part. And then one of the most popular games in history had no real winners.
Yeah.
And it really does. The bounds to which humans will go to steal money are pretty limitless.
Well, I mean, you're not wrong there, but for me, one of the things that blew my mind was how intricate that web was in order to get the winnings out there, and to think of all the things that could have gone wrong or people that could have said the wrong thing to get investigators to figure it out, and it didn't happen. Like,
Yeah. Everybody kept their mouth shut.
I don't believe that you could, like a normal group of people, you couldn't get that to
Dude, I don't believe that we could go to a bar and snag someone's bar napkin and one
I'm
of us
telling
not snitch on it.
somebody giggling in the corner or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah. So how you pull this stuff off, but it
'Cause-
was crazy because if you watch it, it turns out that some of the people who won,
yeah.
quote unquote, right? Some of the people who actually quote unquote won, in other words, they ended up being part of the scam, and
Yeah.
and at the end of it were the people who were the winners. That McDonald's would go and say, "Let's do a shoot, and you're the winner, and let's
Right.
take a video and all this." These are the people who were winners. They didn't get most of the money.
Yeah.
So even the people who were winning
Didn't
were
really.
in some ways victimized,
Yeah.
and a couple of them actually ended up in debt as a result of this. It was a really fascinating,
And they still didn't rat on him.
no, they still didn't. They still didn't.
I guess for me it's like because I remember because I was fairly young through all that, and I remember getting the pieces and everything, trying to collect all the things, which is a really cool game. But I remember seeing stories at the time where people were saying on radio shows and stuff like that, asking if it was rigged because it just seemed like
Yeah.
the odds were so out there because the prices were. I mean, they had like boats and cars and money prizes and
Right.
just crazy things, right?
Yeah, they had a lot of prizes. I mean, I won like fries.
Well, yeah,
I would win like a milkshake. You'd
a
win that
cheeseburger
stuff.
or something.
Right. So when we talk about people not winning, we're not talking about those prizes. We're talking about
Right.
$1 million winners, which
Like
were
literally the
supposed to
cash
be multiple.
payouts or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. And so some of those, I had always assumed that the game pieces that won were like, you finished Boardwalk and Park Place, but there were some that were just the $1 million winner pieces. And if you
Right.
got that piece, you were the $1 million winner.
Right.
And those were, generally speaking, I think the ones that were in question, because it basically guaranteed someone, I could get one piece in your hand, and if I could get that one piece in your hand, you now have $1 million. It basically was $1 million.
Yeah,
I
a
just
ticket.
handed you a ticket
Yeah.
for $1 million.
Yeah.
And the only way to claim it, which comes in, as this docu-series winds down, the only way to claim it is to mail it.
Yep.
They give you very specific directions. You call them. There's a 1-800 number or something. You call them, and the person says, "Oh my God, congratulations! I'm so excited for you. Here's how to handle this. You wrap it in something. You mail it. You do this thing." And that was the only way
Yep.
to claim it, which comes in really, obviously comes in as a big thing later in the case, which is really cool. So yeah, highly recommended. I mean, would you recommend that documentary as a
totally
watch?
would.
I binged it, so.
I should have been a social sciences major in college. To be honest with you, I'm a human that likes studying other humans, so it kind of blows me away anytime you have a situation like this where the amount of thought, the amount of planning, the amount of trust, and the amount of communication that had to have come together for this to work, and all of them be on the same page at all times, and realistically, if they hadn't turned themselves in, nobody would have ever found out. Like,
Yeah, there was a. I don't know how long ago you watched this, but it was recent for me,
it's been
and
a
I
minute for me.
absolutely had a favorite character in this whole thing.
Oh,
And I don't know if you did, but the career criminal guy.
okay. He was
Okay, you remember him now.
The one guy that you'd expect.
Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I knew the gig would be up at some point. I don't care."
Yeah, because he knew
Like,
he'd
well-
been through the process already.
Yeah, he's like, "I'm
Yeah.
not scared of prison." Like,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And then,
I'm
would you
down.
do it again? Oh yeah, tomorrow.
Hell yeah! Why not? Why would I not do that again?
He was just like the nicest. The prosecutor they come, or the
Yeah.
investigators come, and he's like, "You guys want coffee?" I was like, "I know why
Have a
you're here."
seat. Have a seat.
Yeah,
Bring
want
out
some
your
coffee?
notepad. We need to have a talk.
He's like there was that guy, and then the lead investigator on the FBI was unsettlingly smiley and jokey.
Do you think at any point somebody that has worked for the FBI, let's say for 40 years, let's say somebody that has had a career in the FBI, do you think that they routinely get surprised at the antics that people get to when they're doing investigations like this and fraud, or not the far out crimes like God forbid murder and
Right.
stuff like that, because unfortunately
Right.
typically when you get to that realm, those people are so far gone that it just you won't understand why. But
Yeah.
in a situation like this, or when you look at stuff like DB Cooper, or all of those things, the thought process, planning, and execution that has to occur, and then you see that stuff. Like, do you think those people are just like awe-inspired by that?
I don't know. That's a really good question. I would wonder. I would love to sit down and have a chat with
Yeah,
someone who's
yeah,
been around
yeah.
the block a few times on that. It reminds me of this moment. My wife and I, where we were in New York City, and we were going to watch Conan O'Brien film at Radio City Music Hall, and so we were walking past, this doorman, and he was right there at Rockefeller Center, and so we're
Sure.
walking past this guy, and he's just standing there doing his job as a doorman. And I remember walking past him. He was probably 3, maybe 4 feet to my right, and the guy was looking over my shoulder, and so we kind of did that thing where you almost make eye contact, but you kind
Right.
of avoid it, because I really don't really want to make eye contact.
Right.
And he looks over my shoulder, and I saw this look on his face, and he goes, "Wow, I mean, I've never seen anything like that before." And to this day, I regret not turning around, because that was a doorman at Rockefeller.
Yeah.
What has he not seen?
He had to have seen everything. Yeah,
Like,
100%.
what? And so I wonder in the FBI if there are times when people just, investigators are like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's something I haven't seen."
Yeah.
Before. And I would love just a list of those things. What
Oh,
are the
man.
and again, like you said, none of the grotesque, macabre.
Right.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I was investigating this McDonald's case, and everyone was first time criminals,
Yeah.
and they were, and then
Except
there
for
was
that one
like
guy.
except this guy, and he was the coolest guy. Just like,
Yeah,
he was,
yeah.
offered me coffee when I showed up.
Well, Because when you boil back to you, so you think about the guy that did the Catch Me If You Can story, the guy that did the check fraud. You've got, like I said, DB Cooper, which there's another special on Netflix that talks about DB Cooper. That's another one that you might want to watch. What's the other one? Public Enemy. You're talking about back before the FBI was really the FBI. Like they the whole reason why in the 20s and 30s those gangsters were able to be so successful was law enforcement just didn't have their act together. Like they didn't.
Yeah.
There was no interagency networking. And I'm talking about like this police station literally just didn't pick up the phone to call that police station. Like it was
Yeah.
just crazy out there. Like that.
Yeah, you look at the Chicago in the 20s.
Yeah. And that to me just like blows my mind now because obviously they're huge, but that stuff didn't always exist, so there wasn't always a check crime or check fraud division or a like stuff like that, or I'm sure they probably never seen something like this before, defrauding a international multi-billion-dollar company out of
fast food restaurant
like
or
what?
quick service as they want to be called. QSR,
Right.
quick service restaurants. Yeah,
There you
it's
go.
it's got to be fascinating, and you're kind of hitting on law enforcement. And I kind of want to move us to the next
Yeah.
documentary because it kind of plays in the law enforcement. There's a line we all have to walk between how much we're going to be observed and how
Right.
much security we expect,
Yes.
right? And the folks who observe, to some degree, we accept. And then the question becomes, what are they going to do with the information they're observing?
Right.
And so there's another documentary, one I had recommended to you, and I would love to hear your take on it, called The Great Hack.
Yep.
And this one was, it came out on Netflix, I believe, in 2019, and it's focused on the Facebook/Cambridge Analytica data scandal. So I want to catch everybody up if they don't know what that scandal is. Basically, there was this company, it was called SCL, right? And this company was a private research and strategic communications company. And what they did was they studied and influenced what's called mass behavior. And I've got some friends who have lived in that world. And what that means is, what can I do to make thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people do a thing? I want to create mass behavior. And so these folks their expertise was in that and psychological operations. They worked
Yeah.
primarily with the military and political operations in the 90s. And, electioneering and stuff, how do I get certain people elected, all these things. So they opened a company called Cambridge Analytica. And the reason they opened that company was so that they could start doing electioneering business in the United States of America. And so the whole reason that company existed was to come into the U.S. and say, can we make people in millions at a time do something we want them to do? And they started by working on Ted Cruz's campaign back in 2016 when Ted Cruz wanted to be president. So
Right.
what was interesting in this is it was almost like they had a partnership with Facebook, right? Facebook
Right.
was that level of player in this, even though the official relationship was not a business
Correct.
relationship. They never contacted Facebook and said, "Will you partner with us on this?" Right? But the level of integrations that ended up occurring were
Yeah.
disturbing, right? Because the amount of data they could mine from Facebook, just because Facebook was and still is to this day kind of a bad player, and we'll cover more of that, but
Right.
is a bad player in that field.
Right.
So, what did you think of the documentary? What were your takeaways?
It's the last couple of episodes we've had discussions like this, it's been good and bad for me, because it's like, it's good because it kind of opens your eyes to how things have been shaped, but it's bad because it's opening your eyes to how things are shaped.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, right.
I mean, for me, the scariest thing is the fact that I would say 95% of the population out there doesn't understand how easily humans are manipulated.
Sure,
and,
sure.
And that's not just from a standpoint of social media. I mean, you're talking about they grab analytics on what language to use, what mannerisms to use, what facial expressions to use, what topics to focus, how to move somebody off of a topic if it has become a test point for demographics of people, what demographics, like, just on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Like, people
Sure.
don't understand that Analytica company, the depths that they went to. And
Yeah,
and I would beg to believe that some of that thought process was already in place with a lot of in political entities, like knowing how to act or how to speak in front of large groups of people is not something new. Like, that is
sure.
going back over a century. Politicians have researched back, not to go full dark, but I mean, Adolf Hitler is a perfect example of it. He knew
Yeah, very
how
charismatic.
Exactly. He knew how to
Right.
ramp up a crowd and hook that in. But this brought it to a whole new level, because people use social media in a, well, social, I suppose, aspect,
Yeah.
but they're getting farmed. They literally are getting farmed out there, and
They really-
that's I like how you said that, though. It's like Facebook got involved, but they didn't technically get involved. I think, honestly, that's why they're getting so much flame spraying right now, is people that don't play that game, or maybe they want people to think they don't play that game, are trying to make it appear like they're trying to fight back at this crap because of past injustice or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. But
Yeah, and in the case of this Cambridge Analytica stuff, the CEO Alexander Nix is on they did some really good investigative reporting to make this documentary, and they had whistleblowers,
right,
and so they had some folks who were helping, who were inside these organizations, and
right,
the evidence is overwhelming. Right, when you watch it, it's not watching some court, court situation where you have attorneys arguing. This was the CEO of the organization saying, "I am able to do these things. I am willing to do these things,
Yep.
and there is a price on these things."
Yep.
And they do lead. What was really interesting to watch, you brought up a really good point of how little people care
Yeah.
about this data, because they don't think. Everyone thinks I can't be hoodwinked. Everyone
Yeah.
thinks that.
yeah,
I spent 8 years working in the ad firm industry, and here's what I will promise you: if I know enough about you, I can absolutely get you to buy something.
yeah,
100%, I can do that, and they're very good at it. Now, Cambridge Analytica weaponized it, and when I say weaponize it, I mean the formality they were able to place around gathering that data and targeting it at a specific outcome was never before seen. They had used it during the early 2000s in the
Yep.
developing world to influence how elections occurred, and they were extremely successful. In fact, to the point where their algorithms and software and everything that they used was considered by the UK, which is where they were, a weapon of mass destruction, and was regulated. So they
Yeah,
had this computer
yeah.
program, this software
Yeah.
that is now regulated as a weapon of mass destruction because it was so effective. And we decided they did in some ways, if you're a super pragmatic person who doesn't care about the future of humanity, you would say, oh, they just tested the boundaries and they made a bunch of money doing it. Right? If you're someone who does care about the future of humanity, you would say that is skeezy. Right? So it really is
Yeah.
getting into the conversation, which is going to be a huge part of what we're going to talk about all night tonight,
Yep.
of the ethics around collection and usage of people's data.
Right.
And so this Cambridge Analytica, the great hack, if anyone is listening who is on the fence about watching it, I highly recommend watching it. be ready to be skeezed out by some of these things. It is, like Happa said, it is very, you're going to love it and hate it at the same time. It's going to cause those weird conflicts in yourself. And what you're experiencing is we don't know where we sit
Yeah.
on ethics around this stuff yet.
I think that's the biggest point that should be made here too is like obviously we're not trying to fearmonger, but we're not gonna be like, you know, the world is ending, sky is falling, new world order's coming, or not gonna get into any of that. But I mean, it's something that I feel like more people need to kind of have at the forefront. It's like this is something that has been going on. This story was, or the documentary was in 2016, I think. But it, like you had said, I think it had started early 2000s, right? And this also boils back to we talked about last podcast. I had asked you to go watch the show Vice, the movie Vice. I don't know if you got around to see it or not.
I have not caught it yet. We'll do that next time.
They literally talk about the case studies and study groups that they do to do something as simple as change the words global warming to climate change.
Oh, sure.
The words climate change just sound nicer than global warming, right? Or so you'll see some.
There
of
was
the
a huge. That one has a huge. That one had a huge breakout, right? Because Al Gore started off with global warming, and there was a bunch of criticism, right? Around, you had the opportunity to make a message around this, and you used global warming, which people would say is demonstrably false because they don't feel it getting warmer.
Yes.
Even though technically it was an accurate term, and so they had to rebrand it to climate change, which gives people less opportunity to kind of mentally just write it off.
Right.
And there's, it does come down to a really interesting part of human psychology, which is you kind of have two systems of processing. One, which is your autopilot, and one which you use to make difficult decisions. And we are naturally lazy creatures. And I don't mean that in a way to say, derogatory, lazy. No, we naturally we're animals at the end of the day, and we will use as little energy as possible to achieve the outcome. And so your brain learns to do things like driving. That time when you're, how did I end up here? Right? I just drove my car, and you don't think about it. But my 13-year-old would be completely overwhelmed mentally trying to drive a car. Right. So you've gotten to the point where you took a really difficult task, automated it, and you just run through it. And there's a whole lot of people that take advantage of that. And they know that brand recognition is a really easy way to get you to do that. And that's why we have people spending millions and millions and millions and billions of dollars on advertising. And that's what's driving some of these social media companies to say, I can sell more advertising, because they want to collect more data so they can tell advertisers, this Seven guy, he likes the White Sox. And how many times have people said, I was sitting around talking to someone about getting a new car, and all of a sudden I'm getting advertisements about Toyotas. That's a real thing that definitely happens.
100%. Or you'll start getting ads for something that you definitely didn't. Now this is gonna be a little tinfoil hatty, and I apologize for this now. I have a friend of mine that said, look, I've had advertisements on Facebook for products all of a sudden, and I've never Googled the product before, but I have definitely had a conversation about that product with a friend with my phone sitting right in front of me.
And it is a thing, right? You won't convince me otherwise. But let's move into that portion of the conversation and talk more about it, because the skeeziness of what you can do with this data, and people just don't appreciate it. And I think what we want to do here today is not be doom and gloom, but we want to be like, hey, be aware. People need to be aware. And if you're aware of it and you're cool with it, that's fine. I don't think you're aware, because I don't know how you're cool with it if you are. But be more aware. And so Facebook did an experiment back in 2012. I don't know if you know about this or not. They did it on 689,000 Facebook users, and they ran it for 1 week. And what they did was they modified people's timelines, because they wanted to see if you would be sadder or happier based on your timeline.
Oh, right, yeah.
And they wanted to see, like, wow, is Happa going to act differently if we show him only angry things?
Right.
Is Happa going to act differently if we show him happy things? And there was a quote from one of the folks, one of the executives at Facebook. And I'm going to read this quote. At the same time, we were concerned that exposure to friends' negativity might lead people to avoid visiting Facebook. So I'm going to read that one more time. At the same time, we were concerned that exposure to friends' negativity might lead people to avoid visiting Facebook, as if not visiting Facebook was some penultimate sin in your life. In other words, we will do literally anything to make you
Yeah.
visit Facebook,
Yeah,
up to and including lying about what your friends are saying.
100%.
Dude, this was 2012. This was
Yeah.
10 years ago.
If you think for one moment that's not going on, then
Because of course it is. Because of course it is.
well, and that goes right back to our original, episode where we talked about Facebook has there's no income structure, no diversified income structure. Its literal job is to sell you stuff, to get you to get something, go after something. That's its
Yep.
only thing it's got. So it has to be made almost like a drug. It has to be that thing that people, where's my phone? Like people get literal anxiety if their phone is not in the same room as them. It has to be that thing, right? That's the only way that their business model works. And somehow, I don't even know, do we know what the numbers are like of people on Facebook now? Because they used to keep count of that stuff, right? They used to actually
Yeah, I think they still publish it somewhere. I don't have it in front of me, but I know they do publish it. Mark Zuckerberg created it to creep on girls at Harvard. That was the reason the thing got built in the first place.
which
And
right there
it hasn't really gone much further than that.
2.85 billion people on Facebook.
2.85 billion, you said with a B.
That's
a
the
lot of people.
population of the United States is something like 500 million, right?
2.8. Oh, the population of Earth is like what, 6.5 billion.
Something like that. So you're talking a third of the population of the planet?
What is the population of Earth? I gotta look that up now. What is the population of Earth? In
7.753 billion.
There we go.
So
we're getting closer to 8 now. Wow, we gotta be careful.
yeah, man.
That's a lot of people, man.
Not according to our Lord and Savior Elon Musk. Everybody needs to get out and start having children. No, not according to him. There's not enough people
Well, he's
having
trying to populate 6 planets
That's fair,
on his own.
but because just with the Musks.
The Muskins.
Say Muskins. So you're talking over a third of the planet is on Facebook.
So now let me ask you this question, Happa.
Oh Lord.
If I knew everything there is to know, if I knew every friend, every social connection you had, every cousin, every aunt, every mom, dad, son, daughter relationship, whatever.
Sure.
If I knew when you were dating someone, if I knew when you were sad, if I knew when you were happy, and I had 50,000 data points about half the planet, a third of the planet, and I really didn't care about anything but money, I feel like I could find a way to make money off that.
100%. But the flip side is let's remove the entire money making part of it. Let's literally just talk privacy.
Yeah. I mean, because sure.
So I
Reasons
don't
be damned,
remember
right?
I don't remember where I read it, but there was a young girl. She was, I think, 16, right? And her parents found out that she was pregnant
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know this story. Yeah. Go ahead.
because social media was literally farming her surf data, looking up whatever you might need to look up, right? If you're a mom that's worried you might be pregnant, and or like looking at what you need to do ahead of the time, what I need to buy, all these things.
Right.
The search history and all that started focusing ads towards prenatal stuff. And that's what got the parents into digging into finding out that their daughter was pregnant. So they found out that their daughter was pregnant before the daughter even told the parents.
And chances are, if I'm being honest, chances are social media or the internet or the whatever, the machine which runs this stuff, knew she was pregnant before she did.
100%.
She
I can
starts
believe that.
searching on, oh, why was I nauseated this morning, or whatever the case may be, and it's like, I know why you were nauseated.
Oh my god. Oh man, now it's going down a totally different rabbit hole. I think I told you there was a sci-fi channel on YouTube that I was watching called Dust, and it's a just a
You have not
conglomeration.
told me about this.
Okay, so Dust is an awesome YouTube channel. It's literally a mixture of shorts from indie show production companies, everything from digital video to, like, if you've ever seen what was it, Love, Death and Robots on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Think about that, but expand it 500 episodes or something like that. Like, it's
Wow. Okay.
totally random stuff. Anyway, there's one on there specifically that is a doctor's booth. You literally go in. It's a computer. The computer scans you. It goes off your search history. It scans your eyes and stuff, and it can tell you whether you're sick or not based off of all of that. And so it's like, oh crap! Like, what if that's where we're headed? Where we don't even, like, we depersonalize some of this stuff.
I mean, if you're just a data point,
At what point do we say no more, no, stop?
I mean, I said it quite a while back. I haven't used
Fair.
Facebook for
Yes,
some time. I still have accounts, right? And if you're gonna do anything like, let's say, be in a band, and try to get people out to shows, Facebook is still a very effective place to go to say, hey, there's
Yeah.
an event coming up, and I don't want to bag on it. Let's take a moment and make sure that we don't just completely bag on it, because there's an awful lot of people that I would be able to stay in touch with, who I would otherwise lose contact with if not for Facebook, because Twitter is not an effective replacement for that.
Right.
So there are things that Facebook has done for the world which have made it a better place. And the question is, where does the weight fall, right? If you balance the scales, and a lot of it to me falls a little bit to intent. And some of these things that we're talking about kind of show an underlying intent, which is not pure.
Right.
I'm not here to do. Yes, we're making a ton of money, much less now, right? The Q2 earnings are out, and they missed by a bunch.
Yeah.
They came out, I think last week they came out, and so Facebook has missed their targets by even more than they thought they were going to miss their targets, and they're not making as much money as they want. A lot of that's the investment in Meta, fine.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they were making so much money that they didn't have to have all of this, or presumptively they wouldn't have had to have all of this easy stuff, right?
Correct.
The greed is so high. It is so pervasive that it undoes a lot of the good that you could point to and say, hey, that was a really good thing. You did a really good thing. You could point to a lot of those things, but the greed makes, with the way the data gets used, how much of it gets taken.
Yeah.
And we're talking about things like patient health data, right? This article that you sent me.
Yep.
And you're starting to get into the things where it's like you're taking data to a whole new level
Yeah.
of how much you're willing to collect, because no one has stopped you from collecting things in the past.
And that's
Right,
what
all
it
these
boils
things we
down
talked
to.
about.
Right? That's what it boils down to. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Nobody's been able to get it to stick, the stop, to get it to stick on social media, at least here in the States, right? Other countries...
That's fair. The EU has done much better.
Other countries have put laws in place. That shit won't fly, which I think is actually a double-edged sword, because I feel like that has driven them to push into us more, because they know they're getting more money out of us. You know what I mean?
I got you. So it's still a better pool to draw from.
Right. So you get to a point where we've had a captive audience for 2.5 years, or whatever the case may be, during the pandemic. Well, it's like, if they know little Johnny, it has a penchant for X product, well, I'll just start, advertising X product, and you get it next day from Amazon,
Sure.
like, and now they're making money, and they've had so much money rolling in because they've had a captive audience. I think it drove them to this point where they're like, we don't need to diversify, which is what we've talked about, and now they're at a point where people are actually like, oh shit, there's an outside, like. They're starting to break away from that captivity, and so now people aren't looking at their phones. I hope as much as they might, right? Like,
Well, back to the original, like the quote I started with. At the same time, We were concerned that exposure to friends' negativity might lead people to avoid visiting
Yeah.
Facebook. And so Facebook is going to do everything Facebook can do. They're going to come up with new ways to try and keep you from not looking. There are some other documentaries out there, and I can look up the names of them, but they really go into the details of how that algorithm works. And there was this really fascinating time in front of Congress when Facebook was attempting to represent how the algorithm works, and they
Right.
don't know. And
Yeah.
that's how artificial intelligence works. Right? Artificial intelligence, machine learning, all these things, it's just fancy, right? You start off with a heuristic algorithm and you say, hey, look, this is, I want to, 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
Well, you tell the machine, you let me know if 2 and 2 never equals 4, right? And the machine starts learning through observation and data points, and it uses features, right? The features are the things like Happa's wearing a ball cap. Ball cap's a feature of Happa, right? Like, I start looking at this stuff, and the
Yeah.
machine starts saying, how I should look at Happa a different way. Once you've unleashed that and you've said, okay, this is the way we do business now. Once you've unleashed that, there is no going back.
Yeah.
There is no going back to the point, because Facebook used to be, and Twitter was, and I loved Twitter when it was this. It was literally your friends in order
Yeah.
of what they posted.
Yeah.
Nothing more. That
Yeah.
was where both of these things started.
Not anymore.
No. And so now, if you and I, let's say you and I had the exact same set of friends on Facebook. Let's say we did that. We could set up this experiment. I've done it before. But let's say we set up this experiment. We have the exact same set of friends. We will have a different feed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that should be terrifying. Why would a social media site want to show two people with an identical friend set different feeds? Well, it's to sell you something. It's to make you act a certain way. It's to make you take a behavior you may not otherwise take.
And it could be something as simple as they know that X store doesn't exist where you live, but it exists where I live. So now you need to get an advertisement for this, maybe even the same product, but a different store. Because it's geolocated.
It really is. At what point? All right, we're not there yet, or we haven't proven we're there yet. And I'm not going to say we are.
Right.
But at what point do fake friends start popping up?
I mean, how? I don't want to. Again, go into the gloom and doom, but they do exist because there's literally bots out there creating accounts and sending you emails and sending you messages, DMs, and what have you. They exist already,
So the thing that drove me away from Facebook, I'll give you a little story, right? Or story time with Uncle Seven, right? But I'll give you this story that what made me realize that we had gone too far. And I was in the advertising industry at the time, so it was, I was seeing a lot of this kind of trending that way.
Sure.
And on Facebook, I got a message from someone, and they had the same last name as me, and they were in a country, and I have a very rare last name. You know this. Very rare. And in fact, if you ever meet anyone with my last name, we are related. And so they had the same last name as me, and they were in a country where I knew some of my family had moved to a generation back.
Right.
And so this Facebook account hits me up, and it's well formed. You go look at the page, and it's they've
Sure.
got pictures of kids and
Right.
in places and all this stuff. And so this account hits me up, and they're like, "Hey, Seven, it's not my real name, but hey, Seven."
Damn it! He just broke the illusion.
I doxed myself. But hey, Seven, here is I am Uncle whatever. I live in this country,
Yeah.
and your aunt whatever, same last name, has had a medical issue.
Right.
And I am looking to get in touch with cousin, right, who I do know, who is legitimate, an actual human
Oof.
being. And I need $300 for the flight. It almost got me. Now, my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my mother-in-laws, all these people, they got them. I promise you. So I saw that and was it really struck me. If you can fake it to that level, where as someone who knows a ton about this stuff, it was a moment where I was like, that might actually be real. There's no way that's real.
Yeah.
If you can fake it to that level, why aren't more people concerned? Because that's what getting someone's data when you say, I don't care. And sometimes people, I don't care if you advertise me a couch. Who cares? I'm not going to click on it. Who cares? I have ad blocker. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what we're talking about.
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
the surface. That's what you know about. So when I saw that, I thought, how can people not be terrified of this? You know, I mean, there's a lot of people when you get that sort of situation, and it wasn't, if you go back and look at the data, it's not that hard to fake it,
Sure.
given the data
Sure.
that site has
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have everything, if you're not a private person, if you're not somebody that like you put all that stuff on there because Facebook is this, you know, the outlet, the way that you can connect to family and friends, and you can see all those connections, you know, and you get to a point where you're like, you know, third cousin, fourth removed, you know, and they can put that on Facebook. Of course, that's the inevitable end to means, but I don't think it's a people being blind to this. I think it's people just don't want to deal with it. I think you get to a point where
You think
people
it's
are like,
apathy?
well, yeah, partially. I also think it may be a bit of a situation where the average person maybe is like, well, I can't prevent it. I can't.
What do
stop
I even
this,
do about it? That kind of thing.
You know, like I get every now and then something in the mail, right? You're pre-qualified, blah blah blah. It's my first name, but my name only has one S. But they spell my name with 4 S's in a row. Like, I instantly know when I see that, that's a shred. That's just a straight to shred pile. You know what I
Right.
mean? So it's like,
Oh, the straight to shred. The good old
Yeah.
STS.
yeah, man.
You're straight
But-
to shred pile.
But I'm like, I feel like that's a very possible thing. And it goes back to the laziness thing. What's my least amount of effort? People are too worried about they got to get out there and make enough money to pay the mortgage or what my kid's college or whatever the hell they're doing to focus on this. And I think that's why this is social media overall is like the biggest rope-a-dope that's ever occurred, right? Because everyone else has all their crap they got to deal with. They can't be worried about this. They just see this as something that's innocuous, and if it turns out to be nefarious, well, crap, it's a little too late. My whole life's out there. Like, you know? Like,
Yeah, and it is unfortunately, right, evidence points to, and I'm bagging on Facebook on this, right? There's times when
I mean, they're the one that
them.
started it. They're the one that started
They're,
it.
and they're bad actors, right? They have
Yeah.
been proven time and again
Yes.
that they are not just happenstanced into this. They are
100%.
complicit at best. They are involved at worst, right? The Cambridge Analytica, back to that thing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you could have written that off. Oh, they are collecting all this data, and Cambridge Analytica just mined it. Why, if you hadn't collected all that data, it wouldn't have been there to mine,
Yeah.
right? And your greed drove you to have all this data, and you're the only thing on earth that can collect it.
And there was
Nothing
no
has-
other reason to do it other than what you're doing.
There's nothing but greed to drive that collection.
Yes. 100%. 100%.
And it's insatiable. And for whatever reason, Instagram is owned by Facebook, right? WhatsApp is owned by Facebook. And for whatever reason, we continue to feed
Yeah.
this beast.
Yes.
There are options out there. If you want to use, and I'm going to throw some out there because I'm going to transition us into the next part. But there are options. If you want to use a messenger, don't use Facebook Messenger. Use something else. Well, my friends are on Facebook. Well, be the change you want to see in the world, right? And go out and say, hey, why don't we use Signal? That's my personal favorite. My God, if you want to be super paranoid, use Threema, for crying out loud. There are options out there for these things, or use Telegram. Just get off of
Yep.
Facebook's platform
Yeah,
because
yeah.
Facebook is the largest data siphon in history. And we don't yet know the ethics around, or we haven't settled on the ethics around what it means when you collect that much data and how you should handle it.
Yeah.
And so the medical collection,
That's scary to me.
you take all this stuff and add it up, right? So we were just talking about the social, we're just
Yeah.
talking about the social data collection at this
Yeah.
point. But now this article that you sent me is they're getting sued. And I'm going to read the headline. I want you to talk about the
Yeah.
article. I think you've read it more than I have.
Yep.
But here's the headline from, this is posted on businessinsider.com. Meta is being sued for giving United States hospitals a data tracking tool
Yep.
that allegedly ended up disclosing patient information to Facebook. So hit that again. And again, this is from Insider, Business Insider. Meta is being sued for giving U.S. hospitals a data tracking tool that allegedly ended up disclosing patient information to Facebook.
And where all this rolls back to, folks, is HIPAA. Okay, HIPAA specifically.
Oh my goodness.
The law set of HIPAA specifically is, you know, if something is wrong with me medically, unless I sign a waiver to state it is okay to release my medical information to X, Y, and Z, it's illegal to do so. Period. It doesn't matter if I'm actually dying of something. If I say you're not allowed to, you're not allowed to. And
I was actually in the medical industry in 1996 when this came out, and HIPAA, especially for our friends
Huge.
who aren't in the United States of America. I know that
Yeah.
you all are like, oh, that's normal. No, not
yeah,
here.
no.
So
That's
here
one of the
we
few things
have
that we're actually very OCD with is HIPAA specifically.
we finally got it right, on something. And it's the, if you ever want to look it up, it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And what had occurred is there was irresponsible sharing of client
Yep.
or patient information between the medical industry and other places. And so the United States government stepped in, and Congress signed it into law. Bill Clinton was in office, and this was in 1996. And so it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. We call it HIPAA. And you have to get certifications if you're in that world of how you handle someone's data. So if I find out, every job you have, if you're a manager, if I find out that HIPAA has some sort of medical condition, that is considered confidential. And I am legally required not to communicate that unless I have written permission to specifically communicate it to the party I'm communicating with. In other words, you can't give me permission.
Yep.
If HIPAA has a medical condition, there is no point where HIPAA signs over and says, yeah, but Seven can talk about it to anyone he wants to. So unlike power of attorney and some of these other things, it is limited to make sure that if you give me that permission, I only have that permission for that one instance.
Yes.
So it is one of, HIPAA, you may agree with me, the most restrictive privacy laws
Easily.
that the U.S. has in place. And so
I'll tell
now
you-
we're talking about Facebook just being like,
Yeah. They
screw
don't care.
that.
They don't care. I'll tell you, when I was a recruiter for the United States Navy, just to get permission, because a kid could come in and lie completely about their medical history. I have nothing. Well, we would have to have them sign a HIPAA release, and if they were under the age of 18, their parents have to sign a HIPAA release so we could go pull medical records, and then I wasn't even allowed to look at them. It had to be a medical professional in the United States Navy that would look at their records and determine them yay or nay. The biggest thing that I read in this, and it's in like the second or third paragraph of this article. Okay, this is what blows me away. Perfect. The complaint says that these hospitals used a MetaPixel tool, which then assessed patients' password-protected portals and shared sensitive health information that Meta then sold to Facebook advertisers. So you're talking about, let's backtrack this, and I don't know how much you've had to deal with this before, but being in the military, my healthcare portal is that 13 character uppercase lowercase number, can't be any of your last 15, that insane seems secure site. Not secure. Like,
because
selling-
Facebook by design,
yes,
this is not it's not accidental. This is by design. This is what it is built to do. It has no other function as a piece of software.
yeah. And I'm going to promise you that somebody I'm not going to say it's Pfizer or anybody else, but somebody I'll just say Pfizer because that's really the only pharmaceutical company that I can think of off the top of my head.
This comes ahead.
Said Facebook, I'll give you...
We're limited. We're limited. We're like, we come up with Pfizer. That's about all we can do there.
Whatever. But they said, here, Facebook, I'll give you $300 million if you release 100 million names of people that use medications and what medications to me. Of course they're going to jump on that if they can grab the data somehow. Why would they not? And I don't know if it's that.
It's terrifying,
that
dude. Like it to me, that's terrifying.
the thing that scares me, okay, about this paired with the legal system here in the United States, I can almost guarantee you this lawsuit's not going to go anywhere. I bet you. I bet you it won't go anywhere. I bet you it'll be settled out of court or something. You'll never
fair.
hear anything about it again.
That's fair. It would require a federal
Yes.
prosecution. Let's see, who's suing?
I didn't.
New
Yeah, that I don't
lawsuit
remember.
filed last week in the Northern District of California is the second such lawsuit that accuses U.S. hospitals of providing Meta with sensitive patient information and violating HIPAA. The Verge originally reported the suit earlier Tuesday. The complaint says that these hospitals use Meta's Pixel tool. That's what you just read. It does not say who filed it. Okay.
No. But what scares me,
So-
the lawsuit accuses Meta of knowingly collecting the sensitive medical data from healthcare websites. So they're
Right.
not even
No,
they're
right.
grabbing it off of a third-party website. Not
Yeah,
even
yeah, no, this
related.
is not. No, this is not their site. And if anyone wants to know how this works, Google has something similar, and we give Google a free pass a lot of times. And we
Yep.
should not.
Yep.
They are in the exact same boat as Facebook. However, they do have a more diversified platform. However, their advertising tools are similar. So the way this works is if you're building a website, there's a snippet of code that you copy and you paste onto your website in the code, and it runs invisibly. And what it lets you do is you can now go to Facebook and see who's using my site, how are they using it, what are they clicking on, and all this stuff. It's very common. Google Analytics is the most common.
Yeah.
And so you take it, you put it on your site. This is in and of itself not something that is bad.
Yeah.
The collecting of the extra data, however, is criminal,
Yes.
demonstrably criminal.
But are we going to do anything about it?
I certainly hope we do, but I've had
Wait,
that hope many times
is
before.
is that thought process in the realm of like I hope my plane doesn't crash?
It really is as we're in flames and both engines are fell off the wings. Yes, yeah, it is very much that. As I've seen Zuckerberg, doing his little his lizard man
God.
impersonation in front of Congress. Until we stop these companies and we say this is not how ethically we treat people's data.
Right.
We as a society we're gonna have to kind of step up, and our octogenarians in office are not going to do that. Because cars are still new tech to them. So we're going to and so, we have a generational responsibility with my and your generation, right? And definitely the one that follows us, to say we've invented this. It did bring some good to the world. It has the capability for enormous amounts of damage. It can be misused.
Yeah.
And what we have proven that in the opportunity, the fact that it can be misused, this is I've said it before on this podcast. The game Team Fortress 2, right? The sniper video. I always go back to it. He says, as long as there are two people left on Earth, someone's going to want someone else dead.
Totally.
And so, if something can be misused to the demise of one set of humans and the benefit of another, human beings will do that thing.
Yeah.
And so, we can't be trusted. And Facebook is at this point, well, until this point, right?
Oh.
So. I'm sorry, I have to go to the next one. But
No, yeah.
Facebook, to this point, has been
Yep.
far and away the worst actor. It's not even a close second place. Now,
I wonder though.
That's
have
changing.
they been though? I wonder though if that's true though. Well, think about. Okay, well I'll let you. Let's talk about. Let me let you.
no. I want to hear that thought. Let's stay with that thought.
Well-
We got some time. Let's go with that thought.
So we're gonna talk about TikTok next. Okay, I'll throw it out there.
Spoiler alert.
Right.
alert. TikTok.
So 2.3 billion people use Facebook. Okay, I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
what's the number on TikTok now.
Oh, let's find out. It's a good question. Really good question.
1
And I want to
billion.
compare this to something. 1 billion. Okay, let's do this. Let's do Twitter.
Okay, I'm gonna say
matter what.
significantly less.
Yeah, and no matter what Elon Musk says, they're not all bots.
Right, about a quarter of them.
Jack Dorsey. I don't need 400 paragraphs to know this one piece of information, man.
Do you not know? Do you not?
206 million users access Twitter daily.
So yeah, in 2019, Twitter's audience counted approximately 290 million people.
So much smaller.
They're believing 340 to 375 million by 2024.
Great. So much smaller. It's not even in the same
Yeah.
realm.
Yeah. So 1 billion people on TikTok. But I'm willing to believe that number is completely and wholeheartedly off because I feel like it grows every week. Okay. Where this
Certainly
came
does,
from, because Seven and I keep going down this rabbit hole of, social media is evil.
We kind of did get off on that. It was not planned, I promise.
It
Neither
was
one of us
definitely
started
not.
there.
To be clear, this whole subject to me is just completely it's interesting that we have all been duped into this, myself included. I have Instagram, I have Twitter, I have Facebook.
Sure.
Yeah, I won't probably ever get rid of them until I see Facebook says something on, like a notification that says you seem a little stressed. There's a blue pill in your medicine cabinet. Okay, then I might be like, all right, well, let's unsubscribe. All right, that might not be a good idea.
That was a step too far, Zuck.
Exactly. But so I much to my own chagrin, okay, many of you know I'm friends with Karmatica. Her and I have been friends for going on, I think, 3 or 4 years, but I consider her a very close friend. She is on TikTok. She'll send me clips of TikTok every now and then. You could watch these clips without having a TikTok account, but I have thought about starting a TikTok for the content creation side of the house, right? For my Happa Fodder stuff. But something that has, maybe it's the old guy in me, the grumpy old get off my lawn guy. I don't know. I've started reading the terms and services of these applications before I install. And I'll tell you, I started reading TikTok's terms of services, and it scared the shit out of me. And I think around about that time, I posted on Twitter. And as soon as I posted on Twitter, Joe Rogan, there was a video Joe Rogan did on the same exact topic. No connection whatsoever. This just happened to be perfect timing. And he talks about, there's videos out there, if you get a chance, just Google, back on social media again, Joe Rogan, TikTok terms of services.
How about you DuckDuckGo it instead? Let's do that.
Right? When you click OK on the terms of service, and any application you download or any program you install on your computer, all of these things have a terms and services or a EULA, right? End user license agreement. You're agreeing to X, Y, and Z. TikTok's terms of service and EULA, what you're clicking OK to for TikTok to gather from your phone alone, okay, scared the shit out of me to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm never going to TikTok ever again. Never.
So you did not get the account? You
Hell
stopped.
no. I
thinking about
off of their freaking terms of service because I was scared they were collecting my data.
Okay, so like I was talking about earlier, Facebook. When you have a band, and I usually was the guy in the band who handled all the business side of stuff.
Sure.
And in that realm, you almost had to have all of these social media accounts. If you're a public persona, you almost have to have it. And so leading up to that, you're saying, because you are a public person, through jobs, through being a content creator, through being a partner on Twitch, right? Like you have a fairly public persona in an awful lot of ways. You looked at TikTok and thought, and everyone tells us this, right? As content creators, we hear it all the time. This is where this is where the engagement is. This is discoverability. They start throwing these words out there. So you got to that point and you said, all right, cool. I'm going to read the terms of service. Yeah. And something went off in Happa Fodder's brain that said, you know what?
It broke me.
I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah. Well, to be clear, I'm wondering how many big name content creators or actors, actresses, or whatever have, this is my, Demi Lovato phone, and then this is my whatever her actual name is phone.
Yeah, most of them are not actually the people.
Right. To be clear, there, I'm small beans compared. So for me, it's a much bigger buy-in because those people probably have. I can't say that for certain because who knows? Jennifer Aniston might be as jacked up as the tabloids say she is, and who knows? I don't know.
Specific. I gotta see what Jennifer Aniston's
That's my
up
future.
to.
That's my future ex-wife, man. Come on now. You heard Jessica
Okay,
Biel
all right.
when they come around, things are gonna line up. It's gonna be glorious. Anyway, but for me, not so much because when I look at content creators, I see the ones that I follow that are big. They've got all the things, right? They've got Instagram,
Sure
they got a Facebook, they've got a TikTok, they've got this, they've got that, and so on and so forth. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maximum exposure is important here. So I'm not trying to be big, but I'm definitely trying to get a bigger viewpoint to have more people find me, right?
Sure.
And the things that TikTok gathers, okay, because Karmatica and I got in a specific conversation about this, and she didn't read the terms of service. I don't know if she has or not. I can't say that. I compared specifically Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. TikTok is the most invasive application or site that I have ever come across. And when I say most invasive, you literally give TikTok permission to search your mobile device, download everything that's on here that you think it is safe, so selfies, dick pics, whatever you're sending on this thing, and give them access and availability to use.
Yeah.
They know where you are. They know when you're on. They know your habits of when you use your phone. All of them know that. They all know.
Sure, they do. Sure.
That stuff. But I think one of the things that really caught me off guard was, and I know this is also fairly normal for all of them too. But like IP data, device IDs, your what's the words I'm trying to, the words elude me. But either way, the list that they had, and I'm trying to find to read it to you, it scared the crap out of me. Like I was just like,
well, there's been an app. So there was this conversation occurred, and I'm not going to fanboy on this as much as I might want to in some scenarios. There was a conversation that happened back in 2019, and I don't know if you recall it or seeing any news about it. It was a big deal in my world, but it was Facebook's Onavo application. And so what they were doing is Facebook had released this application, right? This mobile app that you could download. And this mobile app would pay you to let you feed them everything from your phone. And so it would pay you $5.
Sure.
And you could get, basically what you did is you said, I don't care if you record me all the time. I don't care if you do whatever. Everything on my phone is yours for $5. And people signed up. And so Apple, the problem is, and where Apple, this is where Apple started their, this was as Steve Jobs is gone now, and Tim Cook is taking over, and Tim Cook's looking for, hey, how do I make Apple stand out? And they chose privacy, right? That's the thing they've chosen. And I know some people are very, frankly, they're calling bullshit on it. And I will tell you, as someone who lives in that world, Apple's way better at it than anybody else. Are they perfect? No, but they're not selling your data to advertisers. And so Apple found that primarily the people who signed up and were getting the $5 were underage. And so they were able to take a stand. Yeah, exactly.
Holy shit.
Right. And so Apple was able to take a stand and say, we're banning that app.
Yeah.
And if you recall, there was this whole thing that exploded from that moment when Apple said in the App Store, we're going to get rid of Facebook. Right? Sure. We're going to get rid of things from Facebook.
Yeah, I remember
and Facebook
that.
was furious about it. And now Google has followed suit, and so we're actually getting into it's new, right? As in the past few weeks, App Store developers are having to follow new rules and meet new guidelines. And so it's the Google and Apple took some time. They cornered the market on mobile devices, and they took some time and said, how do we make this better? And honestly, Google followed suit. I wish they had been, right up there with Apple. I wish they would form like a unification and say this is the ethics of this thing. They haven't done that yet. I doubt they will, but the fact is that's how deep it was going. Well, okay, I'm saying all that to say TikTok came out and said, yeah, we're gonna do that too.
Of course.
And because they had some different verbiage in who could use the app.
Yeah.
And because they weren't actually issuing, here's $5, they've been able to get away with saying, no, we're going to collect literally everything.
Yeah.
And it terrifies me. Let me tell you why TikTok terrifies me. So the terms of service, I'm with you, 100%. They don't have as many of the data points as Facebook has. Okay? So they don't have as many of the hard data points on relationships and things of that nature. It's not built the same way.
Sure.
However, in a world which now has deepfakes,
yes,
they have something more valuable.
They have your image.
They have your likeness.
Yes.
And they can use it for anything they want to use it for. You have signed it away. You've signed away your likeness.
Yeah. Well, and to be clear, that was the thing I told Karmatica. It was like, it wasn't so much the list of things, the language that was used. Okay, it's gonna sound stupid, but as a Navy chief, one of the things that I learned very quickly was you had to be a thesaurus, and because words hurt, words are a thing, right?
Words have meaning.
Yeah, they 100% do, and I'll tell you, it wasn't so much the list of things that they gather from you, but the language that they utilized to state these things scared the crap out of me. It really did. And it essentially, if you were to take their entire terms of service and mash it into a sentence, they basically say, if you use the app, we own you. Period.
Yes. There's an interesting, and I will point at something. I've reviewed a lot of contracts in my time, and what I'll tell you is, in number one, which is your relationship with us under the TikTok agreement.
Yep.
There's an entire conversation about arbitration.
Yep.
Arbitration is waiving your right to a court. Arbitration is saying, if I have a disagreement with this organization, we will decide this by way of arbiter. Yep. In other words, a person.
Yep.
Not a jury. And there's another thing in there in this terms of service, which is they are indemnified, which means they are no longer they are not to be held to. So they are indemnified from class action suits.
Yeah. In other words, they're free of all wrongdoing.
You can't come at them for anything. If you do, we're not going to court. We're going to have an arbiter. Guess who gets to appoint the arbiter?
Yeah. If you think for one moment that's you, that's wrong. That's what we call in the Navy NJP, or non-judicial punishment.
There you go. Yeah.
No judgment.
There you go. Yep. And so any agreement, I would just encourage anyone who's entering into contracts or looking at contracts who are not accustomed with that. Arbitration is not something you generally want to say.
Yeah.
I waive my rights to anything other than a decision by arbitration, because if you do that, you're really betting on your ability to impact one person's opinion of a situation, and you're not looking at a court. You're not looking at a jury of 12 people. There's a lot of reasons you don't necessarily want to say arbitration is how we will decide these things. Companies do want that.
They always do.
Right. Companies are going to want that. Yeah. But as an individual, you usually are not, and I'm not an attorney, right? Don't go find an attorney if you have that question.
Sure.
But arbitration in general is the thing you should be cautious about when you see, hey, item number one is arbitration.
That's why you always see things like not to go completely outside the box, but like the companies that were dumping toxic waste into rivers to the point where rivers were on fire, or people were getting cancers from water supplies because companies were dumping. Like, none of that shit ever got.
Do you have any? So do you know where I grew up? Or you're just saying that? That's just an example out of your head, isn't it?
Yeah.
I literally grew up in one of those communities.
I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah, future podcast. But yeah, absolutely, you're 100% right.
Because the company will just come in and be like, "Look, I'll give you $1 million if you just shut the hell up." Essentially.
And you have entire families. There's stories in my neighborhood, right, where I grew up. There's a story of a woman who had 8 kids. All 8 died of cancer. You know what? That's not normal, guys. right? Like that's not a normal thing. So
yeah.
you're right. They come in and they have a legal agreement of indemnification, and they say we're
Yeah.
going to solve these problems through we make $100 million a day, or
Yeah,
whatever ridiculous number it
you're
is.
literally not going to affect us.
Right. So we will pay you $10 million to shut up,
Yeah.
and it works. It unfortunately works. You know, there's a thing we talked about, and I want to talk about TikTok and Facebook and kind of a combination here with Google. There's a thing we talked about, I believe, in the pilot podcast, but you know, if you want to go back, if anyone wants to go back and reference that, which was these large tech companies, and TikTok is becoming one. These large tech companies tend to buy competition only to shut it down.
Yeah.
And so you really do have a situation where if you create an organization, let's say me and Happa got out there and we wanted to create something really awesome, because this happened with Instagram. Instagram is a fantastic example of this. Instagram was not created by Facebook. The founders of Instagram created it very specifically not to be part of Facebook. But eventually Facebook shows up and Mark Zuckerberg walks in. Money is, you know, literally generating out of his ears like a golden goose. And he's like, I'll give you what you want. They sold Instagram. Now, during that process, they were made certain promises that weren't over the long term kept, because Facebook had an issue and they knew it. And Facebook could not compete with TikTok or companies like that, because at the time it wasn't TikTok, it was Snapchat. Right. So they were looking at how do we get images of human beings, because they wanted to do facial recognition. And anyone who doubts anything I'm saying right now, how many times have you looked at Facebook and it said, is this you?
Right.
How does Facebook know what you look like? That is ridiculous.
Well,
it can look at a picture and can say, is this you in this picture?
Look at Snapchat. All the filters that Snapchat does, it literally scans your face, and anybody that has played any video game today that has facial recognition,
yeah, absolutely,
it's the same exact thing. It literally scans your face in sections and will actually match you up, and that's exactly how they do it. I mean, it's like it's the same thing. If you go back to like Napster back in the day, it got bought out by this company that got about it by that company that got about.
Oh, no, Napster's still around, dude.
Oh Lord,
Napster is still around. Let me tell you something about Napster. You remember what they went through because you were bringing them up.
Yep.
Did you know that Napster pays artists more than any other streaming service?
I had
Napster that exists today. So there was a legal ramification for what Napster did, which was legitimately spread people's music for $0 and 0 cents.
100%. Yeah.
They stole everyone's stuff, but they got legally, you know, taken to task over it.
Right.
And now you have what would be an exemplary actor in the field. So taking people to task legally seems to have.
So that was a feel-good ending at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that was as close as we're gonna get.
Fair.
I think you said Napster. Sean Fanning, like Sean Fanning,
we're gonna get.
Yeah, Fanning was an RX-7 guy. I was an RX-7 guy. We happened to be on some of the same news groups back when Napster was a thing. Like, it was innocuous. It wasn't intended to be what it turned out to be. It was, I want to share some music with my friends.
Yeah.
It blew up.
And
the same thing, you know, and to some degree, I would say other, you know, social media sites, we've been talking about this. The power they have, Happa, is how many people are participating actively.
100%.
That's the power they have.
Yeah. But at the same time, I mean, you say that, but so 2.8 billion people globally are participating in Facebook, but all of them are, including myself, I will 100% admit, I am one of those sheep.
I'm going to go to Facebook right now. Give them a data point right here. Facebook.com. I got to sign in. Hang on. I'm going to give Facebook some data points right now, and they will be chasing me. Look at that. They got me. They got me, Happa. Dude, they got me. 10 years ago, you posted this picture.
So here's the thing, though. With any application, I think the reason they're able to get away with this is the majority of people don't do this. So when you had a regular Facebook account, did you ever go into the privacy settings and look at that stuff?
Yeah. Sure did. But I'm weird.
You and I, that's probably why you and I get along, because we're both the same level of weird. But I literally, every couple months, I will go into my Facebook and double check, because sometimes Facebook will change the settings that you tell it back to the default.
Really?
Yes. Anytime they do an updated terms of service or something like that, 9 times out of 10, their advertising gathering or stuff that you have shut off will be turned right back on. You have to go back in and do it,
Wow.
turn it off again. And I've just learned it's been a programmed habit of mine that I go in and I check regularly. Well, one of the things that I have shut off in Facebook is unless I have Facebook open, it's not allowed to gather any information for me. No location, no nothing, unless I open the app itself. Now, after the conversation you and I have had the last couple of podcasts, I've actually thought about uninstalling the app off my phone altogether and only getting on my
Yeah.
computer.
So what you're saying here, and I want to I want to get into this if you don't mind. And we do have a little bit of time, so I want to dive into it. What you're talking about, I gotta be careful. What you're talking about is, let's show this side, is using Facebook on your device. And so what you're saying is you tend to use Facebook on your phone.
9 times out of 10, it's on my phone. 9 times out of 10.
Because I will tell you that Facebook's data gathering on a desktop, right? If you're using a web browser and going to Facebook, is way different than its ability to gather data on a phone. So if you're someone who really wants to use Facebook, I think this is a really good suggestion. Delete the app.
Yeah, completely.
Just straight up delete the app. If you want to use it on your phone, use it through Safari or Chrome or whatever it is that you use.
Right.
Ideally, you're using Firefox, right? Like use something like that.
Yeah.
And you can cut down an awful lot of what Facebook can gather on you by using the browser. Or use the desktop version of the site.
Yeah.
And there's a lot less that it can do.
And I think that was what I was thinking about earlier is if it's like, well, what if I want to post a picture on Facebook? Well, I can take the pictures now, send it to my computer, and post it later.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. And you should. You should. The app is it's probably worth mentioning, Hapa. We've been going on about Facebook and to some degree TikTok, which TikTok is the worst actor. Let's just start there.
100%. Well, and we didn't even touch on the main reason I think TikTok's the worst actor.
What is that? Let's hit that.
Because of where it actually comes from. Okay, let me, and we've talked about how we won't go into politics and all that crap, right?
It's not political.
Facebook is a bad actor, but it's a capitalist reason. Okay, I can not like it, but I can get behind it because I understand the capitalist mindset. At the end of the day, that money making may be nefarious and unfortunately, dark and dirty. But TikTok was originally created by a government agency who spy on people all over the globe. And if you think for one moment that is a bunch of tinfoil hatting crazy talk, why do you think there was an infogram released by the Department of Defense and sent to every single military active duty member asking them, because they tried to say it's banned, that you're not allowed, all DoD personnel not allowed to touch that social media application, but they realized that was you're not going to do it. Like, you're not going to
the Trump administration, it was during the Trump administration, they tried to dig in against TikTok specifically.
Yep.
And there was an entire, I think Donald Trump himself was trying to broker a deal to get TikTok
purchased. Yeah.
Yeah, and to get it moved to someone else's ownership because there were so many concerns about it being a government actor. And the problem with government actors, go back to Cambridge Analytica if we want to draw a line all the way back to the original circle, is government actors have a vested interest in influencing things like elections. And while companies may have some similar vested interest, they are held to legal requirements in their participation in that. Now we can argue, and we should, not on this podcast, but some people somewhere should be arguing about how much they're allowed to influence.
Right.
We have way too much whiskey for that, but it really is a thing where TikTok was called out as the worst potential future actor. And so what we may be seeing, because this goes, one of the things we wanted to talk about, and I did hit it quickly, was that Facebook is losing money. So we may be seeing or they're not making the money they expect to make. So we're seeing a decline in Facebook and a rise in TikTok. We may be seeing a rise in the worst actor scenario.
Of the worst actor, yes.
Yeah.
So two scenarios that can come out of this. A, Facebook does a change and redoes how they do business, and it comes out worse. Okay,
Yeah.
for us, not for them,
Right.
obviously,
Right.
because the company's going to try to make money, right? Or B, you like you said, you're going to see a decline of Facebook and an increase in TikTok. And I'm telling you right now, I can tell just based off of what I see on those platforms, because there's literally videos from TikTok being posted on Instagram and Facebook. So that
Okay.
tells me that more content is being produced on TikTok, even if there's less people on TikTok. And the fact that I remember being, the old, you'll never see me on TikTok. Here I am looking at the terms of service of TikTok. Like, so,
Yeah.
you know, and that is the part that scares me most. And I don't know if that's tinfoil hat territory, but if you think for one moment that the CCP, those folks across the Pacific Ocean, have the best interest of people in mind, I'm sorry, you don't. You have
Well,
never.
so let's get it. I don't want to dig in.
Sure.
Let's do that in another podcast.
Yeah,
But let's talk
yeah.
about briefly. That is why the entire conversation we've had so far. That is why, at the end of the day, you just stated a fear, right? That
Yeah.
is legitimate and objectively possible. Right? We've proven it. Cambridge Analytica proved that you could weaponize Facebook's data to influence elections.
Right.
They proved it. It's not a question. There's no tinfoil hat there. You can look at everything about it. It exists. And so if all you have to have is money, and you can influence people in the hundreds of millions,
At one point,
and all
are
you need is
TikTok-
money to do it.
Are TikTok people voting on an election?
Sure. I mean, we're coming up to midterms now, so we're going to see. And you're going to have people on TikTok. I happen to have lived through, and I say this a lot in the ad firm world. I happen to have lived through an era where social media became ubiquitous.
Sure.
And one of the most interesting things that occurred was influencers in that era, because that wasn't a thing that existed.
Yeah, it's a whole nother
And-
industry, right?
Yeah, and we were sitting there in the ad firm world, like, what is it? The social media thing? We're just learning how to do it. And for the most part, we were using it to share information. Happa's
Sure.
found a product. Happa likes a product. Happa shares product with Seven. That was the most of what we were doing
Yeah,
early on.
yeah.
And pretty quickly it turned into, wait a minute. There's a Kardashian out here making
Literally the
100
only
million
the only way that they made money, right?
Yeah, they got 10 million people
Yeah.
to click in on a pair of boots.
Oh my god.
And so what happens in the ad firm world? Let me tell you what happens. I'm gonna pull back the curtain on that. Here's what happens in the ad firm world. Here's what happens in the marketing world. You learn that information, and it happens once, and you kind of write it off, and you're going to pay attention to it, but you're kind of writing it off. It happens 3 or 4 times, and you start saying, "How do we do that?"
Yeah.
And so what occurs is you have a client at some point that walks in and says, "I want product X to be at forefront in trending."
Right.
Well, I can't get an influencer to do it because they cost too much money, right? Now these
Right.
influencers cost a ton of money. They want
Yeah.
$100,000 to push a
Yeah.
product,
Yep.
and they push it like it's not an advertisement,
Yeah.
right? So what do? You make an influencer
Yeah.
because it's a lot cheaper than paying an existing one. And you want to know where all these influencers came from? They were all made by marketing departments. So when you look at this stuff and you sit down and look at it, it's not like I'm revealing information that's never been revealed. I'm just talking about
Right.
stuff that I saw happen that I know has
Right.
happened 1,000 times. And when you take that and look at it, these people are really in search of primarily, go back to the McDonald's thing. It was the ad firm,
Yeah.
right? You start going back, and it really is a thing that we should be more concerned about. People should be very aware of their data. I got to be honest, dude. If I could sit down and design something out with HapaFighter today, and I've talked about with engineer friends before, what if I could tell you, you know what? What if I could be up front, Hapa, and I could say, you know what? Here's the data I'm going to collect from you, and I'm going to pay you 3 cents for every advertisement you're willing to look at that uses this data to show you that advertisement. And if you click it, I'll pay you 5 cents. So I would pay half a fodder for your data. Now, here's what I would predict would happen. A lot of people would say no.
Yeah.
A lot of people would say blanket yes. The majority of people, I believe, would say, let me tell you what to show me. I'm looking for a new pair of boots. Show me boots. I'm fine with that. Pay me 2 cents right every time you show me a pair of boots. And eventually I'll click on one and I'll spend $150 on it.
And you'll
Now, if you
say,
do
yeah, you
that-
buy it.
Yeah, but you do that, you're in charge of the data.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why can't we democratize our data back to the people who have it, who should own it? Why hasn't someone invented that yet? Why is that not ubiquitous yet?
Well, I'm kind of stuttering because this is something that
Sorry,
scares me
I broke
because
HAPA.
Yeah, you did. You really did. No, write this down. War Inc.
What is it?
War Inc.
War Inc. Okay.
Have you ever seen the movie Gross Point Blank?
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, one of my favorite movies of all
Okay.
time. War Inc. unintentionally was the sequel to Gross Point Blank.
War Inc. War, comma INC. War
Yes.
Incorporated.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
War Inc. is the premise that war is a business. So you literally like there's one scene that is hilarious. There's a branded tank driving through the middle of a war like a field.
That is. Oh my God! It's hilarious and terrifying, and everything about it is just. You can absolutely see it occurring.
Hey, if you think for one moment that isn't actually a thing, by the way, let me tell you a secret. Let me tell you something. Want to hear a song about it? Here we go.
Yeah. Let me tell you something.
2007, a significantly more muscular and skinnier Happa found himself in a significantly warmer and more sandy part of the world for approximately a year.
You're at the beach. So young
That was
Happa at the beach.
A very large beach, an insane beach, thousands and thousands and thousands of miles
Lots
of
of
beach.
beach. Lots
Okay.
of beach. Very little water, lots of beach.
Exactly. While I was in this place, there were where you would go to eat every day. There were products that were free. You literally could go in and grab as many of these drinks, many of these, whatevers.
Mhm.
I won't say specific brand names, but there was, screw it. Rippets. You ever heard of Rippets? It's an energy drink. You've never heard of a Rippet in a 7-Eleven or something like that. But if you ask a veteran or active duty person, have you ever heard of Rippets? They 100% will tell you, oh, God, yes, I love those things.
Mm.
If you think for 1 minute that's not branded water, you're wrong. Power
Yeah,
bars, all these things that are healthy or whatever, these companies got all these contracts. But anyway, that's a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah.
but War Inc. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. There is we're heading down a rabbit hole where we're talking about these product placement plus incident equals profit, right? And your politicians see this and are also buying into this, which is a very scary thing because you got social media doing it, you got politicians doing it, you got people dealing with it, right?
Yeah. And I feel like Happa. So I was backstage. A friend of mine was doing a TED Talk in South Florida, and I went with her in support. And so I ended up standing backstage, and I'm talking to this guy who's one of the most foremost researchers in artificial intelligence. And his talk was like next or whatever it was, and I was asking him about AI, and what it turned into is what we've been talking about this entire time, which
Yeah.
is what are the ethics around technology? And I think that conversation needs to occur.
Oh.
And it needs to occur. And until people take it seriously and people say, I'm emphatically saying that we should have that conversation, I am not saying where we should fall on it. I'm saying the conversation needs to occur. And
Do you think it's going to occur, though?
I don't, until we as a group, as a knowledgeable society, until we say we have to have this conversation, it will not occur. We have to force it to occur.
Yeah.
Because I think that the companies and governments stand to benefit too much from it not occurring. And that's what we've talked about in this entire podcast. Companies are profiting from it. They're happy. Governments are able to overthrow entire other governments. There was, and this has had to be what, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, at South by Southwest in Austin. There was this talk, and it was called, "So I overthrew my government. Now what?"
Yeah.
And it was how to, the talk was about how to use Twitter. So this conversation has been going on for some time. The companies are not gonna lead the way. They're just not.
Yeah.
I think there's some companies out there, Apple, right? DuckDuckGo is a good one. I mentioned it earlier. There are some companies out there who are trying to lead the way and say we don't have to do this. So there's a few, but they're way drowned out by the enormous profits of these companies who are on the other side of that fence. And government representatives, unless they are just altruistic, they're not going to lead the way either, because they're benefiting from it by getting elected or having, companies contribute to their campaigns.
Or
Sure. Oh, insider trading. My goodness. Boy, could we get into it on that one. So we, as a group of human beings who are saying, this is our data, you're using our value, you're trying to make us behave differently. We should have a say in the process.
Yeah.
And until we do that, the conversation simply won't occur.
It's never going to happen.
So we got to convince,
you know what's going to happen?
People, what's going to happen?
You know the movie WALL-E?
Prediction? What's Happen's one beer prediction?
The movie WALL-E. By and large.
I don't know, man. Being fat in a chair looked pretty cool to me.
By and large is going to be a thing.
So you don't have a
I hate to be a pessimist.
I was gonna say you don't have a hopeful outlook on that.
No.
Well, maybe we should think about it, right? Like maybe if anyone listens.
How do you topple
us?
Let's be honest, multi-trillion-dollar. If you really broke down every penny made, not just by Facebook it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, global, multinational, multi-trillion-dollar industry. You can't break that. It can't break that.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna happen. If you're gonna give me my chair with my clothes that change color and my drink that is my turkey dinner, I'll go be that guy.
It is interesting because we've talked about this in the last episode. Elon Musk talking about buying Twitter at $44 billion.
Yep.
And we covered that Twitter was the small player. And so when you're talking about money at that level, I would like to say that Seven, right, me, I'm a pretty decent dude. I try to be a decent dude. I try to do the right thing in the world. I would have to pause at some number of me, my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids, never having to worry about being provided for. What would you do? And that is what we're dealing with at the top levels of the technology world right now.
Fair.
Is these people may have started out as good folks. They're not. They're not doing the best thing for the world. They're not using their resources to say specifically, I only want to help. And they have the capability of doing so. I think Facebook is a fantastic example of that.
But you're completely off on that because admittedly, Facebook was created for what?
Creep on girls at Harvard.
I promise you there was a discussion at some point with Mark Zuckerberg and the other two yahoos in a freaking conference room where they actually said, what is your goal with this? And at some point, either all three of them or one of them said, I want to do the X, find a chick, and I want to make a shitload of money.
Sure.
And I don't give a crap who I step on to get it done.
Yep. I had a pastor, in fact, ask me this one day about, in the technology industry, and I won't go into it, but what function I serve in that realm, asked me, what would surprise you? And the only answer I could come up with is if one of the billionaires was a good person.
Literally.
How messed up is that?
It's not,
And I've met
because all of them say
I'll
the
be
same
honest
thing.
with-
In order to become a billionaire, you need to literally step on the faces of the people that get you there. They,
so
they
I will tell you
literally
this, and
all will
this-
tell you that.
I've met a couple, and the ones I've met are people you don't know their names,
Yeah.
and they're good people. And so it really does beg the question: we as a society, are we forcing this to be as bad as it can be? Because we're not taking the actions, the responsible actions of saying, let us just force them. Like, okay, we're forcing in one direction or the other, and we're not forcing in the direction of don't use my data against me.
Well, is it maybe because of people like me then that don't believe that there's a positive side
There
out
can't
there?
be a positive outcome.
And I'm not saying that as a joke. I'm like,
Yeah, no, I this is why we're having this conversation. So you are jaded to a point where you think this is just the way it is and the way
well,
it shall be.
I don't think it's. Let me be clear. I don't think it's jaded. Okay.
Okay.
I know what I can control in this 1,480 square feet. I know what you see what I'm saying.
This
you
is
see where I'm
this is my section of Earth.
this is my little itty bitty piece of the planet. Like, I know what I can control here. I know what's going in and out. I know what I'm providing for my family. I know. You see what I'm like.
Yeah, I hear you.
I have said unabashedly, and in some, I've lost some friendships with the statement. I don't care who is in office, so long as they are maintaining or increasing the money that's sitting in my bank account and its value. I
Yeah,
literally
pretty
don't
pragmatic.
care. I literally don't care. I don't care if there's bombs dropping on the other side of the planet, because I've been the guy dropping the bombs, or loading them. Maybe not dropping them, but I like it. It sounds like a very callous, very horrible point of view. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at your kid and you're like, "There's food on the table, there's a roof over your head, there's
Yep.
clothes on your back. This is
Yep.
what I'm trying to provide you."
That's a really interesting point. I will say this, and we can move to the next subject because I think it's a little lighter. But
Yeah.
I will say this: human beings all over the world want a couple of things. They want to take care of their families, and they want to be reasonably happy,
Yeah.
and they want to die in peace as much as possible.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, provided that, most human beings will respond favorably.
Sure. If you can guarantee that. So I know I'm sorry, I'm sidebarring it, but if you could guarantee
No, this is
that,
why I said it.
if you could guarantee that 100%.
Mhm.
You don't know beyond a certain amount of years. I can't state what that is, but if you knew not a care in your world for the next 60 years, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
Would you sign that line?
So that we're gonna leave for another day because that question
Yeah.
needs to stick and be thought. I have a friend who contends that at age 80
Sure.
that he should be exterminated.
Oh,
If-
that seems a bit
if-
drastic.
Hang on, if from the age 55 to 80 he is taken care of. So he has worked out the math. If I can retire at 55 and be completely taken care of, don't have a worry in the world, I can travel, I can do all the things I want to do. At 80, make me not a drain on society. So he has gone
That's
to that point. I have a
interesting,
friend,
actually.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that.
and he's like, I can pick the day, I can do whatever, but he has gone to that point of saying, I'm not going to be a drain on society, but for a period of time, 15 years,
Sure.
society has to, give me, I've provided to society
Yeah.
for an amount of years. Now,
Yeah.
let me just enjoy it, and then I'll bail.
Well, that kind of brings it back all the way, circle back to my opening when I talk about I'm a retired person, right?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Look at that.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, because that's something my dad told me at one point when I was getting set up to pick up the job at Wargaming, because I remember telling him, because he asked me, he's like, "What happened? Like, you were happy you were doing this?" I said, I don't know. I just thought it was something for me to do. He's like, "Well, look,
Yeah.
man, if you're happy doing it and you want to do it, do it. But if it becomes a point where you're not happy anymore, you don't want to do it, stop doing it." So a year ago,
As
a
simple
year
as that
ago,
is,
I
that's
was like,
fantastic
"I'm not
advice.
happy anymore. I'm good. I'm done doing it."
There was a guy I used to work with, and he had a saying, and this will hit you. I know this will hit you because I know you a little bit. It will. He used to say this. I'm a fairly passionate human being. I wear my passion on my sleeve. It cuts both ways. And the guy used to have the saying, if you're not having fun, you're the asshole.
Yes, 100%. 100%.
And right, it has stuck with me because if you're not having fun, change something.
How many people get up every morning like, I have to go to work. I hate my job.
Sure.
Blah blah blah. What's that saying from God, what's that movie? Meet the
The Fockers.
No. There was this guy who was a drug dealer, and he gets paid to move drugs from Mexico to the United States. I can't remember the name of the movie, but at one point he's getting a haircut to make himself look more like a. And he's like, "Give me a haircut that shows that I get up every single morning, working my my middle of the road wage paid life. That I come home and listen to my teenage children bitch and whine." Like, just he goes on this tirade, and there's this guy in the back who has this very like cosmopolitan haircut. He's reading a magazine. Halfway through the tirade, he stops, and you see him in the back. He looks up because you see him in the mirror, and the guy's on this tirade about how like I hate my life but I get up every morning because I have to do a blah 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 haircut. And the guy goes, "Hey man." But think about I have met those, I've known those people.
Sure.
And I think that's what made me choose the life that I have now specifically, was because I've been that guy I literally would, my routine, I'll tell you right now, and this may or may not have had a little bit of bearing based off of the relationship I had with my ex-wife, near the end, but I got up at 4 a.m, and from the moment my alarm got off till the moment I laid in bed, I freaking hated every minute of it. I hated every minute.
Really?
I hated getting up for work. I hated going to work. I hated like everything about it. So when I went to retire from the Navy, I was like, I need to have a life where I may get up at 8 o'clock in the morning. I may get up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I may get up at 11 in the morning. And I may sit on the back porch. I may go take the dog for a walk. I may mow the lawn. And that was like very important to me. And that's what I ended up doing. Like, that's where I'm at now, which for some people is probably boring, except for when you've lived a life that you hate. When you're sitting on the back porch and I'm watching the dog chase a damn squirrel or something, that's entertaining to me. Like, I'm happy, And
I think that's what I think that's much closer to what humans were meant to do.
100%.
We're not meant to populate. We're not meant to sit at a desk for 10 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's not how. Even physiologically speaking, that's not how our bodies are built.
Correct. That's why people have lower back problems, hip problems, and
sure.
mental
and
illness
psychologically speaking, it's not even close.
Correct.
And so when you look at, and this kind of ties into what we've been talking about, when you look at the pursuit of greed over all else, how pervasive has that become?
Things are important.
Yeah. Things matter more than anything.
This is not true. We may not even get to the next topic, and I apologize for that because I've kind of sidebarred on it. But last year, this is what it would have been actually close to 2 years now. I was at the Domain here in Austin, which if you and Mel ever come, I'm going to take you guys there. You're going to love it. The view is amazing. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I was sitting there and I'm enjoying a beer, and it was at a table that was overlooking the river, and I was by myself. I was just sitting there enjoying a flight of beers, trying them out, and this woman in her 50s and her husband walk up. "Hey, you mind if we share the table with you?" Of course not. There's like 8 chairs at this table, this long table. Like, I'm taking it. By all means, enjoy the view with me. We start talking. Guy asks the usual questions: where you're from, blah blah blah. Their daughter comes and sits down. Very attractive girl in their 20s. When I sat down, I shit you not, the mom and daughter just 100 miles an hour. Just constantly, nonstop. And the husband just sat there very quietly, pint glass, looked out over the lake, took a sip, whatever. The daughter was like, "I need to go to the bathroom." Mom was like, I'll come with you, as women do, right? They get up, they leave. And I usually don't open a conversation like this, but he seemed like he was very relaxed. I said, how do you stand that? Like, how have you, how long have you, like, your daughter's obviously in her 20s, like, how do you put up, he's like, there is no other life. I would not live if I didn't have that. That is the life. He's like, I'm retired, because he was retired early too, but that was because he was a tech industry guy, but he made billions or millions, whatever, and retired, and that was it. And now they travel, and Austin was someplace that they're visiting. He said, there is no greater gift in this world than that. I worked my entire life to provide that.
For him, that was the most fulfilling possible way to spend his time.
And I said that, how do you put up with that? Not in a means of like, God, I can't stand that. I was like, how is that for you in your life? And he was very candid. Like, he was like, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes my wife travels without me. I cannot live without that in my life. Like, I have to hear that, you know? And I've briefly told you about that too. Is like, for some people that are divorced and separated from their kids, you know, I've had the conversation with my ex where she's talked about the kids are constantly fighting and I can't stand it, blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you right now, as someone that doesn't have that in the house, when it's not in the house, you miss it. You miss hearing that. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and you know, I think this is probably the perfect place for us to wrap on this. The end of the day, it really does come down to, how do you want to spend your 1,483 square feet? How do you want to co-populate? How do you want to be a better human? Leave this place better than you found it. And how do you want to do the right thing? And while we may go on about social media and all these other things, it really is in an effort to say, we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose what makes us us. We don't want to be commoditized into cookie cutter patterns that lose the humanity, which is what is important to us.
Right.
That's good stuff, man.
Why is it so looked down upon nowadays when somebody new moves in next door, knock on the door and say, hey, I'm so and so, I live next door if you ever need anything?
You introduce yourself as Happifire, don't you? I know you do.
I 100% do. I actually hand him a card. If you ever need
hey, I'm on TikTok.
Services or
I'm on TikTok, check me out.
Yeah. A follow, that's all I ask. You're my neighbor, I think it's the least you could do.
Yeah, we have you know, I live in Alabama and we've talked about this. Texas is probably not too dissimilar. Neighborly is still a thing. And when someone moves in, we go over and we bring them something, you know, a pie or something, and we're like, hey, great to meet you. We're so and so. Live right over there. Here's our phone numbers. If you ever need anything, call us. Love to tell you, love to have a dinner at one point and just tell you what we do, what you do. Let's figure out how we interact. And we've had, I've had good luck in this neighborhood that I'm in right now. I know some of the folks very well, but I've had other people completely turn that down.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting.
There is nothing more, you ain't from around here, are you, boy? Then
you're from an entirely different zip code.
And I make the joke too, because Austin is the least Texas part of Texas that you could ever live.
Certainly. Birmingham is the least part of Alabama, least Alabama part of Alabama, sure.
100%. And I will tell you, and I think you and I have this conversation on the site as well, but the HOA message boards, I went there one time, replied one time, and will never be back again. And I could tell exactly which neighbors were from a part of the country that will remain nameless, but the state rhymes with California, or a big city in general, right?
Yeah.
And those that are genuine Texans, because when I met my neighbor right here, she literally brought me muffins over and said, hey, my name is, I'll just say Jen. If you ever need, this is my phone number. You text me anytime. Yep. Let me know if you need anything. And when I left to go to, say, Baton Rouge, I literally say, hey, Jen, I'm going to be, gone from the house for a couple days, just so you know. All right, cool. No worries. And
I got a neighbor I got a neighbor in the same boat, you know, and we got several, in fact, and reach out and hey, we're headed out to New York, or I'm headed to San Francisco,
Yeah.
wherever I'm headed. I'm going to be gone. If there's a party at the house, you have two options: join in or stop it. Right?
Right.
If you're there, we're good. Right?
We know something's not
and
right.
right. And every time I get a laugh out of that. So yeah. So we'll end APA here. I will end with a piece of good news that I want everyone to hear. The Alex Jones trial is going on.
Yep.
If anyone has been looking at it, this is the InfoWars guy, right? The
100%.
conspiracy theorist. He's kind of a notorious, in my opinion, at least a slime ball. He attacked the Sandy Hook victims,
I couldn't
and
believe it.
some of the. I have actually, you know, this is pretty personal to me. I have a friend, a very close friend, who is his kids were there for that,
Oh wow.
and so this one hits me pretty close to home. So Alex Jones made it his point to say these are paid actors, and this is not a real thing. And the parents of some of the Sandy Hook victims have sued Alex Jones. Now these are not criminal charges, right? This is a civil court, and so
Civil
this
court,
is right. This is issuing out some sort of punishment. Well, as of today, Alex Jones has been ordered to pay $4 million to the first family. So there are more families to be found. So what I will say is, you know, there was a really interesting moment in this trial. And I'm very happy about that. I think that
Yeah.
the spreading of misinformation and disinformation needs to be a blip on our societal radar. It
Yeah.
needs to not be a
Yeah.
thing we normalize. And Alex Jones was absolutely making millions of dollars off of doing nothing but that. And this is, it's not a good look, right? You know, you need to be able to depend on the people who have a huge megaphone. And if
Sure.
they're stating something, we need to hold them to task over it's at least an attempt at accuracy. And so what was interesting, and I wanted to tell you this, and we'll end on this because I think you'll find this hilarious. There was a moment in this trial, and it was tweeted, and I'm sure a lot of people have seen it, but there was this moment in this trial. And so Alex Jones, you know, notorious for some of his behaviors, and he had told the prosecution that, you know, I didn't have knowledge of this, or these were the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
It represented himself a certain way. Well, his attorney, he's changed attorney something like 12 times in this process.
Yeah,
So his
yeah.
attorney had accidentally, quote unquote, sent the prosecution an entire record of Alex Jones' phone. And so the prosecution now has this thing and apparently hit up his attorneys and said, hey, I don't think you did that on purpose.
Yeah.
Alex Jones' attorneys elected not to recant. And so in this trial, Alex Jones says a thing, and the prosecution says, did you know that your attorney sent me free and clear
Yep.
with no confidential notice the entire contents of your phone? And to watch Alex Jones turn this color red
Right.
was one of the more rewarding moments I've seen. The guy's had it coming for some time, in my opinion.
100%.
You don't go after people. Kids got shot at a school, man. You don't go after
Yeah.
those people.
Yeah.
Right? There's even if you're just playing a game, there's lines you don't cross. And so
Yeah.
watching that moment was really fascinating. But what I will tell you is, after all this conversation of data privacy, I want to end on a question. Alex Jones, known conspiracy theorist, absolutely there are text messages on that phone which would incriminate higher level government officials. Should they be on WikiLeaks?
Ooh.
Because now this attorney
Yeah.
has this,
Yeah.
has it free and clear, was presented to this attorney with no confidential disclaimer. In other words, as legally, as far as this attorney is as far as I understand it, at least,
Yeah.
this attorney is concerned, could publish it.
Yeah.
There's a real question to be had there. How much privacy do we expect? So all the way back to the beginning, you don't have to answer it. I don't want you to answer it.
Yeah.
But all the way
We'll
back
be
to the
on for another
beginning.
hour if I do.
Yeah, exactly. All the way back to the beginning, we have to weigh how much privacy we expect with how much security we demand.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. That's a great question. That actually brings up another topic, which we'll leave that for later. But I definitely am gonna have this conversation because I know you'll understand the direction I'm going. But it's like you said, it was a good outcome to. I didn't understand when I first read the story about that. I didn't understand exactly why they were in court, and I started digging out. I didn't even know that he had
Yeah.
claimed some of the stuff that he had claimed. I was like, what? What?
When you dig into it, it gets really, because it's
Ridiculous.
probably not something you spend a whole lot of time paying attention to,
No,
right? Like it's not in your
Because it makes
your
no sense.
orbit. Right. So it's not in your orbit. It's not something you see.
Yeah,
But there are
yeah.
people out there
Yeah.
who spend their time saying this is fact, and it has caused significant amounts of damage to these human beings. This was about a 6-year-old dude.
It's horrible.
A 6-year-old got shot. So yeah. I would say it's really interesting, because if you say data privacy should be ubiquitous, then it applies to sleazeballs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's the unfortunate side effect of our legal system, though, too, right? Our legal
Certainly.
system's the same level of ambiguity, unfortunately, I think, as well. But anyway, that's neither here nor there, and that's for episode 4. So maybe 5 and 6.
Episode 3.
Possibly, or technically
Which we'll do
3.
soon.
Yes.
Yeah, technically 3. We keep doing that.
2 weeks. 2 weeks, folks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We
Yeah,
will
I think
do
Thursday.
the next episode.
Thursday seems to work for me.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we already discussed the fact I don't have a life, so,
Well, if I'm not traveling, it works. That
Fair.
happens to be,
Well,
it makes
because
sure
you have a
everyone.
life,
Well, not really, but everyone who listens should
Oh, very
know
well.
that a lot of the delays
Yeah.
traditionally have been me traveling, and I apologize for those. Those are on me, not on happen.
Well, one of the things I think we did mention in the pilot episode was the fact that we were going to try to stay
Yeah.
to a schedule, but there's no promises because of real life aggro. So it's a
Right.
thing. So in theory, the 18th of August, 2 weeks from now, right?
That's good for me, man.
There you go. So same. And sorry we didn't get to it, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Same bat channel, same bat time.
You're killing me, because that's what I wanted to cover.
know,
All right, yeah,
I
same bad
know.
time, same bad
We
channel.
will.
Well done.
I tell
Well
you
done.
what, we're gonna have a nerd section, a nerd out section in the next episode. We will talk about this. We're going to
All
talk
right.
about this.
All
We've
right.
talked about social media for 3 episodes. That's enough for a little while. Anyway,
Yeah, we'll put a plug in that. We'll have to do something different.
totally. So anyway, for those of you that are subscribed to our podcast channels throughout the various listener world, thank you so much. For those of you that are subscribed on the YouTube channel that like to watch us, thank you so much. You can check Seven out at his Twitter. You can check me out at my Twitter, Facebook. Seven does have a Facebook, by the way. If you guys would like him to get on his Facebook, I would suggest you DM that Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't know that he'll actually be on it, but whatever. It'd be funny to have him log in and have like 50, DMs.
How my
Any-
medical records have been published.
literally leaked. They know about the boil on your toe, man.
My medical records would be so boring. It's like torn rotator cuff and
Right.
stupid
yeah,
crap
I'm the
like
same
that.
way. Nothing cool. All a bunch of stupidity.
Yeah,
pretty
nothing
much.
really worth having.
But anyway, this is what we'll call it a night, folks. From me to you, I would like to say that I hope you continue being a better human being, and I know I love and appreciate the hell out of every single one of you. Seven, do you have anything to say before we close out the evening?
No, just I appreciate everyone that checks us out, and same as you. This is the thing we are very aligned on. Leave the
100%.
world a better place than you found it.
100%. Be a better human. Be a better person. Just take care of each other and be happy. Smile, laugh, joke, go have a drink, whatever. Cheers
Or
and
two.
all that stuff. Or 2. We'll see you all in 2 weeks, hopefully. Have a great night.